Welcome in. You are sitting courtside with Karli Bell. Man, oh man, did we have a weekend in Indianapolis, ladies and gentlemen. What's crazy is if you look back at any other WNBA All-Star weekend, most conversations were about the game, other fun things that were happening, activations, all just fan events, meet and greets, WNBA Live, all of that. And instead, all of that was overshadowed by the WNBA CBA negotiations. That was the theme of the entire weekend. If you did not follow along on the YouTube channel, I did a couple live streams this weekend chatting through everything that was happening in real time. But for those who did not, you're more than welcome to go back and watch those on the YouTube channel, which is Courtside with Karli Bell. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe while you're over there. And then, of course, if you weren't following on socials, which is at Courtside KB, or at my personal account, which is at Karli Bell 33 on all platforms, I had live updates consistently from the All-Star weekend. But we're gonna get into previewing the second half of the season in just a second. But let's get into All-Star weekend. First off, Team Fee just absolutely dominated. They just fully dominated it. What's crazy is the game was not, I'm not gonna, like, this is shady, but it wasn't fun, if that makes sense. Everything else, all the comments, all the commentary, all the chatter, all the talk was all about the CBA. And let's get into it, because I got there Thursday, as well as almost every other media representative. There were things that were going on, this, that, and the third, all that. And that Thursday was the meeting between the Players Association, 40 some odd players that showed up, which is the most turnout of players in league history, along with the actual WNBA commissioners, league office people, and then the board of governors, owners, all of that. It was a meeting that ran over 2 hours with players after the meeting. And if you were not watching the Stud Bud stream, you missed out. But on the Stud Bud stream with Courtney Williams and Atisha Heidemann, Courtney Williams basically said, she goes, I need a shot after that meeting. And like, I need to get back to having good energy and good time. And then on media availabilities on that Friday, the next day following, it was all like, that was the biggest, players kept saying that was the biggest waste of time, that we could not be further apart. My eyes were opened to what is happening, I didn't know X and Y, I didn't know A and B, I didn't know this. Why aren't we getting this? Why aren't we getting that? Why aren't we getting this? Like, it was a very vocal conversation from all players about what they did, what they want, what they need to achieve, all of that. Kathy Engelbert in her press conference called it constructive chatter. Let's take a listen.
Again, I want to call it constructive. We had candid dialogue, and this is part of the process. When I first joined the league, actually 6 years ago on Thursday, I was 4 days in the job, and we had our first collective bargaining meeting at All-Star. So I actually think we've had a bunch of meetings already, and I appreciated how many players came to the meeting. I thought that was great. Communication's important, and having that meeting, being at the table was important with that scale of players. And I would just say we've been through these negotiations many times. This is only my second one, but my team has been through many of them. And I just want to say I really respect the players. We're listening. They're listening to our owners. And we're kind of in the middle as the league, trying to make sure we're setting this league up for success for decades. And that's the goal, to have a fair CBA for all. I want a lot of the same things the players want. I said that last time too, and it's not changed. And but we also have to have a process where we go back and forth, and that's where we're in the process. So I'm, again, still really optimistic that we'll get something done, that it'll be transformational, and that next year at All-Star we'll be talking about how great everything is. So, but obviously there's a lot of hard work to be done on both sides to get there.
So it sounds like both the league and players could not be further apart. It doesn't sound like this is going to go well. And then get to the actual game day on Saturday, and in warm-ups, players get out of their warm-ups and they all wear the "Pay Us What You Owe Us" shirts. And as I'm walking around the arena, fans from all over were wearing hats that said "Pay the Players," shirts that said "Pay the Players." They held up signage that said "Pay the Players." When the game was over and Kathy Engelbert walked out there, the crowd started chanting, "Pay them, pay them, pay them." The whole weekend was fully overshadowed by the CBA talks. Now, I was in Indianapolis and I talked to several people about how the meetings went, what went down, what they're trying to achieve, all of this. And for those who don't understand, WNBA players are not asking to make $70 million a year, $120 million. Like they're not asking for NBA level contracts. What they're asking for is a percentage of revenue share. Right now it's 9%. They want more than that 9% because that 9% caps roster spots, caps space, caps salaries, it caps everything. A lot of them don't make money on merch. A lot of them don't make money or see any of the money from merch sales, like ticket sales, and none of that. They see this much compared to their compared to their NBA counterparts who see this much. It's one of those things where they're asking for, and Nafisa Collier said it best after the game. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, the players of what is building this brand and this league. There is no league without the players. And, the past, present, the ones coming up, they're the ones that have put in the blood, sweat, and tears for the new money that's coming in. And so we feel like we are owed a piece of that pie that we helped to create. So that's basically what that is.
I mean, this was the entire chatter of the whole weekend was just pay us what you owe us, pay them. Pay the players. That was it. That was the whole chatter. And for my own personal take on all of this, at this point, right now, would not be shocked if there's a strike, there's a lockout. Would not be shocked one bit. And frankly, I'm kind of anticipating it now. I talked to several people prior to the All-Star weekend, prior to that first in-person meeting of players in league and board of governors, players association, everybody. And a lot of people were like, we think that the people that I spoke to, they're like, it would be foolish for them not to get it done, which I agree with. I think it would be incredibly foolish for the league and the players to not come to some type of agreement and get this done. I think that would be awful for the league. That would be bad for the players. It just would not be good overall. Something needs to get done. But is it going to get done by the deadline, which the deadline is October 31st? In my opinion, in my own opinion, in my personal opinion, no. Is it going to get done in time for an expansion draft, which from precedent and what we saw just this past year with the Golden State Valkyries draft, that was around the end of November, beginning of December is when all of that started to go through. Do I feel that the league will get it done by then? I don't believe so. Do I think it's going to get done by the start of free agency, which announcements and everything start February 1st, but general managers can start contacting players around January 6th, January 7th, right at the beginning of the new year. Do I think it's going to get done by then? I don't think so. I think this is going to take a lot longer than fans want. From everything I've heard, all the emotion, the feeling, the intensity of it all, the league and players could not be further apart. I don't think they're even near middle ground. I think they're still slowly trying to get to a line where they can meet in the middle. I think this is going to take an incredibly long time. Do I think it could get done by the draft? I believe they're going to get it done before April of 2026. That I think is plausible. But you're going to have a shortened season. You're going to have an incredibly short draft. You're going to have it's not going to be a good product in 2026. You need to get it done. In all reality, you want to get it done by Thanksgiving. You can get away with not having it done by October 31st. In my personal opinion, it will not get done by the deadline. It won't. I don't think it will at all. I believe that it will get done. In my opinion, it'll get done by when traditional free agency starts, which is February 1st. That's when I believe everything's going to get resolved. If it happens prior to that, even better. But then I think we're going to see a shortened season. I think we're going to see a lot of different things happening. And what's so different and something that was also brought up is, what is the expansion draft going to look like this year with upwards of 80% of the league being a free agent. And what Engelbert basically said was, we're still trying to figure this out. We're still going to try and figure out the rules and all of that, because that does throw a wrench in how you can have some type of expansion draft. Because if everybody's a free agent, then you're choosing from like this, like a really small pool of players that you can protect. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. I don't know. I personally believe that this is not going to get done in time. And I think that there could be a strike, and I think there could be a lockout. And I think more than ever, Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited, both of them, are going to see astronomical numbers this year, because fans are going to be craving seeing the girls play, and they're going to be itching for it, just itching for it. And I think the numbers are just going to go up compared to Unrivaled's inaugural season, and then what Athletes Unlimited has done in the last couple of years. I think this could be incredibly beneficial for Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited if a strike does happen. And if I'm a player, if I'm putting on my shoes, like I'm a player right now, and I'm putting my player hat on in this situation, I'm putting my foot down. We want to come to a resolution. You don't want to say, we only want this and we're not going to hear bargaining chips. That's foolish. You want to negotiate. You want to have things there. But if I'm a player and it's not done by Christmas, I'm going to go and make my bag that I'm making it Unrivaled or Athletes Unlimited or overseas, and then we can talk about it after that. Because why? If the WNBA is smart, you get it done before Unrivaled starts. That's the smartest thing that they can do. If you get it done, especially just from a marketing business standpoint, think about this for a second. 80% of the league is free agents, right? So every fan of WNBA teams wants to watch. And we saw it this past year. They called it tampering, which was funny. You know, you have Unrivaled tampering with things that were happening, players recruiting other players to play with them on teams, which was a great time and a great fun to have. And it really actually fed into more of what WNBA, I don't like the word rivalry, but that's kind of the only way, like the fans and the player rivalries that are good for marketing started to like become, they're like, oh, the owl against the phantom, the rose against, like you saw that at the beginning of the season. If the league wants to capitalize on that, which they should view Unrivaled as a partner with them. They should not view it as an enemy. That's the dumbest way to view it, because what Unrivaled is doing for you is keeping chatter about your players on throughout the off season. That did not exist really prior to them, because here in this, guess when all of the overseas games are happening? While Americans are asleep, while Americans are at work, while Americans are doing this. Unrivaled provides the ability for fans to watch the girls of their teams, watch the players of their teams that they want to watch. So if you're the WNBA, you want to get it done, because then you can actually create conversation, you can create chatter, you can create, is Skylar Diggins of the Owls going to try and poach this person from Rose to join her in Seattle? You know, like that type of, that's great discourse. That's phenomenal discourse to have. So if you're the league, you want to get it done before Unrivaled begins. That's why I'm saying, if you can't get it done, it's not going to get done by Halloween. It just won't. I can almost guarantee it's not going to be done by the time of the deadline. And that is actually okay. Your real deadline, in all reality, is like right at the beginning of January. That's your actual deadline. Because if you can't get it done before general managers can start talking to players, can start having conversations about contracts, can start formulating a roster, you as the WNBA have really, really made it incredibly difficult to put on a great product in the summer of 2026. You just have. You've made it incredibly difficult to do, because then you're limiting, because that was the one thing that Unrivaled Athletes Unlimited actually got going is, and we saw, if we're going to just take Sky is the example. You had Angel Reese and Unrivaled being able to work with Ariel Atkins, who was there in Unrivaled for Courtney Vandersloot there for a little bit, able to do some work together, have conversations together, and actually create chemistry early on so that you can see good product. You can kind of get ahead of ahead of the curve in no better way. There's no other way to say it, in creating better chemistry. It's just what it was. And it was something that was really beneficial. It actually brought in new fans. We saw an increase in viewership this year. It's just, and then also add in, the draft. You had Paige Beckers, you had Kiki Iriefin, you had Sonia Citron. There were also other, Haley Van Lith. You had a lot of people in the draft that were adding to this as well, for sure. But you brought in a consistent fan base that wants to watch the women's basketball product all year round. That's a great thing to have. So the league needs to get it done. If I'm a player, top 3 priorities for me, obviously revenue share. That's the biggest thing that needs to be resolved, because I don't think players are not asking for $7 million contracts now at this point for this next CBA. No. 15, 20 years from now, possibly. Right now, no. If I'm a player, the revenue share percentage, whatever it is that they're aiming for, whether that be what the men make with the NBA's percentage is, which is around 40%, or it's less than that. If I'm a WNBA player, you're going to shoot for 40%, but you can settle for 30%. 20 to 30%. You can settle for in there. That's what anything's better than the 9% that you have now. Anything is. So if you go 20%, 25%, 30%, I think settling for anything less than 20% is selling yourself short as a player. I think you need to absolutely be, if they're like, we're not going to give you this percentage of revenue share, but we're going to give you X, Y, and Z, which is better insurance, expanded rosters, more safety, health and safety protocols with guaranteed security, the charter planes, which has helped with it, holding ownership to a standard of what you need to have built and have in store to be considered a top tier team and to still have, I don't want to say your stake in the league, but have your stake in the league. You can have a bargaining chip there. That's something that if I'm a player, you're then forcing ownership groups to pony up the money and be there like, look, okay, we're here, we'll play. Well, we accepted less than the revenue share that we wanted under the promise that you're going to give me a practice facility, that you're going to give me actual training equipment, that you're going to give me more staff to work with, that you're going to provide security, that you're going to provide a chef, that you're going to provide all the gear that I need. You're going to provide this. I'm going to have a locker. I'm going to have this. I'm going to have my own gym that I can go work out in anytime that I want. That is what players should be bargaining for when it comes to revenue share. There's that. Then there's also expanded rosters. And if you can't get the expanded roster spots, like guaranteed roster spots of upwards, and I think anything more than 14 spots is too much. I think 14 spots is perfect. Then you negotiate that to, instead of having it be 2 guaranteed spots, you create an IL and IR of a couple players that you're allowed to have on contract of a set minimum salary, whether that be 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, whatever that is. That number can be arbitrary at the end of the day. But you have a couple players on for a very, very, very low base minimum salary, and you keep them there as an option. They're still practicing with the team. They're still with coaches. They're still learning the jargon, so that if something happens like we've seen this year in Phoenix, in Chicago, in New York, Indiana, in Dallas, where there was a huge flux of injuries, you then can pull from that IL or IR, whatever you want to call it, and have 2 players that have already been in the system come in and be there and be able to jump in. And then if you need more than that, let's say there's like a flurry of injuries that happens, then you still have the hardship contracts, the emergency hardship contracts, injury replacement contracts, all that jazz. That's the second thing. The third thing is you ask for the season, the actual season, not games, the actual season to be expanded. You need to have it happen. Obviously, there's going to be times where Olympics, Eurobasket, America, FIBA, all that's going to play a factor. But if you're going to be playing 44 games in the same amount of time that you were playing 32 games in, then you need to add a couple extra weeks either at the front end or, in my opinion, I believe at the back end of the season. And I've said it on here on the podcast that I truly believe that the season should just not be in the summertime. I believe it should be playing in the winter, in the fall. And I know that's something that I don't think is going to happen in the CBA at all. I don't think it's something that's going to happen during the CBA. I think it's something that you look for in 15 years, because if they're going to continue to expand games, but you're not going to expand how long the season is, if you're going to say, let's say, play 54 games in the same amount of time, you better add some you need to then change when the season is. It needs to then be played from like October to January, September to January. And yes, you're fighting all the other leagues, or you have it start July through November, July through December. Then you're actually creating training camps that are more than 2 weeks long. You're actually allowing the players that are getting drafted the ability to finish school if they are seniors, the ability to walk at their graduation, the ability to travel and get to where they need to go, get their bodies some rest if they were playing long into the NCAA women's tournament. Like, there's things that you need to think of beyond just the now. You need to think 2030, 2035, 2040. You need to get that foundation laid now so that when you're able to build the pillars up and build the second, third, fourth floor, the penthouse, all of that, you have a sturdy foundation there that can allow for this growth to continue. That is the encapsulation of what all the CBA talk was this week. It was, I mean, that's all any player talked about. Like, obviously there was the fun little chit chat, you know, that you saw on the orange carpet, things like that. That's whatever. But in regards to any other discourse, no one was talking about, do you think your team's going to make the playoffs? No one was talking about, oh, how are you as a team going to try and overcome injuries? Nobody was talking about, are you guys looking to build for next year? Every single player talked about CBA. Every single one. It's just unheard of. That's not been the case at the midpoint of the season. And also, it was a real short week. Games were done on Wednesday. Players arrived Thursday. They played a game Saturday. And the day that this is out, on Tuesday, games are playing again. So you got 2 days rest, 2 days rest. And if you're the Chicago Sky, you actually had 1 day of rest. Then you fly out. Your Monday is your travel day, and Tuesday you're playing. Something needs to get done. Something needs to get done. There needs to be actual change in the timing of the schedule and how the schedule is working to preserve the health of the bodies that are playing at the end of the day, because you're not playing with players that are 18 to 25. These are 21, 22 with the couple 19, 20-year-olds in there. These are 21 to 22 to 35-year-olds. These are hoopers that have been playing for a long time. Their bodies are up there in age. They need rest time. It needs to be, I'm not saying load management, but you need to have an adequate amount of rest time in the week for these players' bodies to recuperate, to get healthy, to recover. And I feel that is something that, while the revenue share is incredibly important, that needs to be a top talking point amongst players, is how can you keep the bodies safe and healthy and secure and strong so that you're able to get the 10, 15-year careers that you were seeing out of the Candace Parkers, Tamika Catchings, Daryl Swoops, Tiffany Hayes, Courtney Vandersloot, Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, all of them. That needs to be a conversation. So we're going to chat here in just a little bit about previewing the second half of the season. But before we do that, again, make sure you follow us on all platforms. That's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Blue Sky, at Courtside KB. You can check out our website, which is courtsidewithkarlibell.com, which I have free content there that will start kicking back up again here in just a couple weeks with some stories that are coming out, projections, analytics, all of that. And then if you really love hearing me talk, we're going to take a break from the Patreon this week, but that will come back in August. That is the Patreon, patreon.com/courtside with Karli Bell. Make sure you join that man-to-man tier to get the exclusive content each and every week. Starting in August, we're going to take this week off because the season just started. There's not much really to talk about. So the second half of the season just started. So we'll get into it. All right, let's actually talk about that second half of the season. If you look at the standings, and here are the standings, heading into Tuesday, July 22nd, at the top of the standings, you do have the Minnesota Lynx. And in my opinion, I don't think there's anybody that will overtake them at that number 1 spot. I just think they're playing some of the best basketball right now. I think they're just looking incredibly confident, incredibly talented. Right behind them, New York Liberty, who just on Monday announced that they are signing former Chicago Sky forward and 2019 champion, international star in Emma Miesemann. So I really do believe at this point we are going to see a repeat of New York Liberty against the Minnesota Lynx in a 7-game WNBA finals. The only team that I think could be the surprise pull in there is the team at the number 3 seed, which is the Phoenix Mercury. They've been playing very well. Alyssa Thomas has just been on an absolute tear. I think she's absolutely in the running for MVP, but I do think that Nafisa Collier is just playing a lights out level basketball right now. At the 4 seed, you have the Seattle Storm playing there. I think they're starting to peak at their best time. At the 5 seed, you have the Atlanta Dream also playing great basketball. I know they have been without Ryan Howard, but she will be back at the start of August, so they're not going to be without her for a long time. At the 6th seed is the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark also still not really fully healthy, dealing with a groin injury. She has barely played consistent minutes since around the beginning of June. It has really been back and forth. She did not play in the All-Star game because of that groin injury. We have that. Not a good sign for the Indiana Fever and whether or not they can really make a push. At the 7th seed, you have the Washington Mystics, who have just surprised everybody in what they've been able to do thus far. And a team that was in a rebuild mode, they're playing really, really, really good basketball with a lot of young bucks doing a lot of great things. At the 8th seed is the Las Vegas Aces, who have kind of just come down here this year. I do believe that they might still be able to make a push for the playoffs, but I don't know what they're really doing. It kind of looks a little discombobulated right now in how they're able to put a full 40 minutes together. You see peaks and valleys of it, which is how most teams are. But when you're seeing teams like the Phoenix Mercury, New York Liberty, Minnesota Lynx, who have just really been up here and they've had a small dip and then they get back up there. I mean, it's one of those things that you sit there and you're like, man, how do you compete with that? At the 9 seed, just outside of the playoffs, is the Golden State Valkyries. Again, an expansion team being a 9 seed is just unreal. I don't think anyone anticipated it. They're having just a great start to the season. 10 seed is the Los Angeles Sparks. Followed behind them at 11 is the Chicago Sky, 12 Dallas Wings, and then in last place is the Connecticut Sun. In my opinion, people asked me this weekend about the playoff seeds. I'm going to be honest. I do believe that the top 5 teams are locked. I think it might be movement and who's going to be like a 3, 4, 5 seed, but I think those top 5 teams are going to stay the top 5 teams, barring any crazy injury or something that happens here in the second half of the season. 6, 7, and 8, I believe, are up for grabs, especially if the Indiana Fever are unable to have Caitlin Clark fully healthy for the second half of the season. We saw how impactful her presence is when she's not on the Indiana Fever. They need her shooting. They need her ability to just garner energy on the floor and really have things moving. And without her out there, it's really been a struggle for the Indiana Fever. So we'll see how long Caitlin's out. I feel like it's going to be an injury she's going to be dealing with her whole career, because a groin injury is something you can't just like put a cast on it. You can't. It's a weird injury to rehab. It's something you're going to be dealing with your entire career. Lisa Leslie actually said it prior to the All-Star game, is that that's something that she, in her age and her retirement, still feels now. It's something that she's going to be dealing with the rest of her life. And I feel for her. I don't ever like seeing anyone get injured. And I hope she is able to get healthy so that people are able to see the type of shooting and offense that she's able to bring. Washington and Las Vegas. Biggest question in regards to them is they are both at 500. They're both sitting at 11 and 11. And then you have Golden State right behind them at 10 and 12. If you look at the second half of the season, the teams, and I'm going to be honest, Dallas and Connecticut are out of the race at this point. I don't believe they have a chance. Connecticut's been out for a minute. I think Dallas is really out of the playoff conversation now. I do believe that you're going to see a battle between Washington, Las Vegas, Golden State in reality for a 7 and an 8 seed. But I would not be shocked if LA or Chicago got on a hot streak at the end of the season to sneak in as an 8 seed. But from a Chicago Sky standpoint, because that's why most of the people here listen to me, right? Is to hear Chicago Sky takes. Chicago Sky are without Ariel Atkins for their game on Tuesday. Everyone has been asking, do we know what the extent of the injury is? We do not. At this point of the day that I am putting this out on Tuesday, the 22nd, we don't know the extent of the injury. We don't actually really know what the injury is. We don't know if it's day to day, if it's she's out for the season. There's no real understanding of what the injury is. And also now the Sky are without Michaela Onyenwere with an injury as well for the Tuesday game. Again, still don't know what that is, because you have to remember the Sky were unavailable for the All-Star break. There wasn't any talk or access to anything that was happening within the teams because all the PR people were at All-Star game. So that was kind of what that situation was. But in reality, do I believe the Sky can make the playoff? If Ariel Atkins is out for an extended period of time, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. And it's not because it is because of Ariel, because you need that defensive energy and she was somebody that was averaging 18 to 20 points a game in the last 5 weeks, losing that value, that many points on the floor, and fans saw it in the game right before the All-Star break when both Angel and Ariel were out. Both of them were putting up between 18 to 20 points, 15 to 20 points a game. You lose two players that are doing that. That's 30 to 40 points that you don't have on the floor. And you saw the Sky only put up 59 points, 58 points in that game. So when you don't have those two scorers out there, especially when you don't have Ariel, who your guard group's already kind of depleted because you don't have Courtney Vandersloot. So now who's going to be your two? Are you going to bring in Haley Van Lith and have her play the two? And now that you don't have Michaela Onyenwere, you're going to have to rely on Rebecca Allen coming back in and playing the three more than likely while she is out dealing with an injury, again, that you don't know the extent of. So the injury bug, and here's the biggest issue, is because the Sky did carry 12 players. If Ariel Atkins and Courtney Vandersloot are out for the year, guess what? The Sky still don't qualify for a hardship contract, because then you're only at 10 players. So sorry to break it to you, Sky fans. They don't qualify for a hardship contract. So unless you're going to waive somebody, which at this point in the season doesn't make the most sense. And who would you waive? You're going to waive your draft picks? That doesn't make sense, because that's who you have guaranteed on contract for next year. Why would you let them go? You need players for next year when you don't know what 2026 is going to look like. You're going to waive Rachel Banham? I don't think that's smart either. She's been doing great at the point guard position. You're going to waive Rebecca Allen, not with Michaela Onyenwere out now. You kind of need her to play in that wing spot. Could you waive Kia Nurse now that Ariel Atkins is now out? You need depth at that 2 spot. You're in a position now where you can't afford another injury. And if you do get another injury, you don't know how long it is. So you're still not qualifying for a hardship contract. It's one of those things that the Sky, unfortunately, losing Courtney Vandersloot was like the dagger in the coffin. And the one thing that Tyler March said right before the All-Star break is what he really wanted to see out of the second half of the season is he said, we've been 2 different teams this first half and we need to find a way to play with consistency. If you're injury laden and you're dealing with issues here in the second half of the season where you don't have consistent health and you're not going to have a consistent starting lineup, how can you stay consistent? And this is where conversations need to start happening about roster construction. How is this roster constructed? Why was the roster constructed this way? You don't go and get a backup point guard, a veteran point guard, to play behind Courtney Vandersloot because you're banking on Courtney Vandersloot to teach Haley Van Lith to be the point guard. That's a huge risk. You also take a huge risk in trading for Ariel Atkins and giving away the number 3 overall pick in the 2026 and the 2025 draft. And now that the person that you traded for isn't healthy. Conversations need to start happening around how this roster was constructed, because if you look at it, you brought in veteran leadership that you absolutely needed. I think that was the one thing that was absolutely missing on the 2024 Chicago Sky, but you don't have a true point guard now that Vandersloot's been out. You haven't had a true point guard. Rachel Ben, this is no knock to Rachel Banham. Rachel Banham's done a great job picking up the role that she hasn't played since college, and she can do it. She absolutely can do it because the Sky have had better facilitation, better offensive energy with her leading the offense than it was when Haley Van Lith was leading it, when Ariel Atkins was leading it. Rachel Banham is the person to lead the offense, but she's a shooter first. So if you had a true point guard out there and you pair that with Rachel Banham's ability to shoot the 3, and then you I really have enjoyed Michaela Onyenwere at the 3 spot, keep her at the wing, and then you have Angel and Camilla, or Angel and Ewell, or Ewell and Camilla in your guard group. Have Maddie Westbeld come in as well to provide rest for minutes. You really only created a roster that was 6-7 players deep. And that's a huge problem when you lose your starting point guard. They have the ability to do it, but they can't play with any consistency. So then you look at and you can absolutely have a conversation about the style of play, but I do believe that the style of play that the Sky are playing with is better than what they did in 2024. You're seeing more off-ball movement. You're seeing better screening. You're seeing better shot selection. There's things there that actually involve a scouting report. That was not the case in 2024. There wasn't a scouting report to be had on the Chicago Sky offensively because they were just kind of all over the place. There wasn't anything consistent there. There's now a lot of look at how the roster was created, and that's front office and general manager. So it's one of those things where you have to sit there and you look and you're like, why was the roster created this way? Why did you make the moves that you made? You took a lot of risks in the offseason, huge risks in the offseason. And that's what I said when the Ariel Atkins trade happened. I said, what Jeff Pagliacca is doing is a huge risk, and only time will tell if it paid off. Time is showing that it's not paying off. You took a big swing, it was working, and then you lost momentum, and then it was working, and now you're losing momentum again. So we'll see what happens with the Chicago Sky. Them getting a huge signature win over the Minnesota Lynx was great, but guess what? Everyone was healthy. That's not the case now. And you have a tough stretch here over the next, just over this over this week. Heading into tomorrow, guess who the Sky play again? The Minnesota Lynx. On Tuesday, the day that I put this out, they're playing the Minnesota Lynx. On Thursday, they play the Seattle Storm. And then on Sunday, it's the Fever game at the United Center. If you don't have Ariel Atkins back, you could go 0-3. You don't have Michaela Onyenwere and Ariel Atkins, you absolutely can go 0-3. You just don't, the depth's not there. You can't have it all rely on Angel. You can't have it all rely on Camilla. It can't all be on Rachel Banham. There needs to be equal distribution, which is what the Sky were doing in that win over the Minnesota Lynx. There was equal distribution of the basketball. The assist numbers were great. The rebound numbers were great. Everyone was shooting. You had 5 players in double-digit scoring. That is who the Sky can be. But if you don't have people out there because people are not healthy, you can't control injuries. You just can't. So we'll see what happens here in the second half of the season. Again, I believe those top 5 spots are locked up. It's going to be a fight. I do believe at this point of time, I believe that the Indiana Fever will lock up the 6th seed. So it's about whether or not Washington, Las Vegas, Golden State, LA, and Chicago. It's kind of the 5 teams that you're looking for fighting for 2 spots. I'm going to say Chicago's in the chance to do it. But if they're not healthy, it's going to be tough. So we'll see what happens here in the second half of the season. But that's all I have here on this episode of Courtside with Karli Bell. Make sure, again, you follow us at Courtside KB, Courtside KB on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky. Make sure you check out the YouTube channel, which is Courtside with Karli Bell. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe there. Make sure you check out our website, courtsidewithkarlibell.com. And if you want more exclusive content, join the Patreon, which is patreon.com/Courtside with Karli Bell. That's all I have for you this week, and I will catch you next time on the sidelines.